Jimmy, I gotta take a dump.
What?
No, I mean I need a dumpster.
Well, for all those needs, you need to call Big V Dumpster Rental, Long Island, New York, 631-900-DUMP. Grand Wizard. What was your
Yes.
relationship like with the other managers from that awesome time period? Freddie
Okay.
Blassie, Lou Albano. I see Sir
Oliver
Oliver Humperdinck
Humperdinck.
is in that picture too.
Yeah. Okay. During the highlight era in the 70s, Madison Square Garden, I mentioned earlier, was every week. Well, I'm sorry, not every week, every month. Every
Right.
month, every actually every 3 to 5 weeks, depending on what the date they can get.
Right.
And at the Garden, I would drive Grand Wizard, Fred Blassie, Lou Albano, and whoever was in the main event to Madison Square Garden. I would pick them up at the hotel, and I would drive them every month to the Garden. As soon as Lou Albano got in the car, he was on, cursing at people, yelling, screaming, going insane. My car used to get rocked and shook and shaked. And he
Really?
would bang on the side door and curse at the people. He was on. So I was very friendly with all of them. And I would take all three to the Garden every month. Besides taking them wherever else I would take them if they needed. I was really close with Fred Blassie too. And Freddie was getting up in age and he couldn't get around as much. And then I would have a friend sometimes drive him if he needed a ride.
George,
And Lou Albano was just as crazy as you saw him. That was Lou Albano.
That was
that
Lou,
was Lou
huh?
Albano.
That was Lou.
He was on. He was on from the moment the moment he woke up. He was on.
He lived
was
the-
Lou-
he lived the
was
gimmick.
Lou- yeah, and he says, "I'm Captain Lou Albano. Captain. I was the captain of my football team. No one could take that name away from me." And that was Captain Lou Albano.
That was Captain Lou. So we're talking about behind the curtain stuff. As you know, there's that show Dark Side of the Ring that comes on
Yes.
every year. What are your thoughts about that? And I'm going to name a few episodes. Just give me your feedback. I know you're a huge Ric Flair guy. How did you feel about the plane ride from hell?
Okay. I think what Tommy Dreamer said and got chastised for was the real answer. It was Rick being Rick. They've seen it before. It wasn't a new act. Rick was always Rick all the time. He would try to, for lack of a better word, show off, whatever. Just Rick being Rick. I know Tommy Dreamer said that, and he lost his position on Busted Open and Impact for a little bit. But they shouldn't have done what they did. But that's how it was at that time. I mean, look, Rick would go on TV and say, "Tonight, woo, tonight, the Marriott," and that was it. And,
Right.
and the place would be mobbed.
Yep.
And people knew what they were there for. Let's leave it at that.
It's too bad you were married. You could have went to the Marriott too.
Would
I-
you please?
There you go.
Boy, it's a
Smart
good thing
man.
there was nobody taking photographs, huh, George?
All right, that's true.
That's
That's unbelievable.
All right,
Oh,
how
my
about
Lord.
Snuka, Nancy, Argentina?
Oh boy.
Uh-oh.
Oh boy.
okay.
Oh boy.
I was in Allentown that night into the next day when it happened. I knew her. She was a friend of Johnny Rod. Johnny Rod's girlfriend, later wife, was her good friend.
Okay.
And she introduced him to Snuka. She introduced Johnny Rod's Johnny Rod's wife was friends with Nancy, and she introduced Nancy to Snuka.
Right.
What went on behind closed doors, I didn't know. They used to come to all the local matches in Brooklyn and Long Island and Queens and Staten Island just because they were around. I mean, what am I going to say? It happened,
Right.
and it shouldn't have happened, but it happened.
Right.
But I'm sure there were others, and now if you're a baseball player and you do something, you can lose your career or get 80 games suspended or what happens.
All right, the last one, Chris Benoit and Nancy.
Chris Benoit and Nancy. Okay. Do you want the go back story, or you just want the?
We want whatever you
give
got
me the
to
whole
offer.
thing you got.
Whatever you got to offer.
Okay.
Give me anything you got
Well-
on Kevin Sullivan, my friend.
Kevin, I knew Kevin, 74 maybe, first started. Kevin was, and to this day, is one of my best friends in the business.
Kevin's awesome.
So let's just say that.
Yep.
It was 80 something or whatever. See, to me, everything gets squashed. Everything is compressed. I don't know what date. I don't know what match. I can't tell you who was on this WrestleMania. I mean, as I said earlier, I watch everything through the circle. So everything's one big mishmash. So in the 80s, at some point, for my Wrestling All-Star magazine, we had Billy Jack Haynes, world's sexiest wrestler. And I posed Billy Jack Haynes in Florida, in Orlando. And I had a girl on this arm and a girl on that arm. And one of the girls went on to marry Slash of Guns N' Roses. And the other girl was Nancy. Kevin Sullivan is in the dressing room where I was, watching me this whole time. And he says, "Where'd you get that girl from?" I says, "She sells programs outside." He says, "What?" I says, "Yes, she sells the programs." He says, "How do you know her?" I says, How don't you know her?" So I took the pictures and then I introduced Kevin to Nancy. And what happens is Kevin tells her, "I want to make you one of my people. I want to make you my fallen angel." And Nancy said, "No, I don't want to. I have nothing to do with that. I'm married." So eventually, Kevin, every week, and it was weekly, he would go to Orlando, and every time we would be there, he would see her and say, why don't you come? Come, I need you to be my fallen angel." Nancy would say no. And then eventually, a couple months later, she drove to Tampa, where they were having TV, found Kevin and said, "I'm here. What are you going to do? I want to be fallen angel." Well, Kevin had to go to Eddie Graham and then Mike Graham and explain to him what he wanted to do. And that's how she became the fallen angel. That's part one of the story. And then later, she then gets married with Kevin. And then Kevin is the booker, as you probably know. He's the booker with WCW and books the match with Chris Benoit. And the winner would get Nancy. Nancy would go to wherever the winner is. So Kevin lost the match, and so Chris Benoit now has control of Nancy. And Kevin, to make it look real, booked Nancy in the hotel where Benoit was, and we'd be in another hotel. Well, things just happened, and Chris Benoit got together with Nancy without Kevin. And then she divorced Kevin, married Chris, and that's how they got together. And whatever happened was very, very unfortunate. I think Chris snapped, and went crazy. And people were blaming Kevin. There was an undercurrent of blame to saying that Kevin was the one who did it, for what happened, but he wasn't the one who did it for any reason. And whatever happened, I don't know what happened, but I know what happened as everyone else does. But I had pictures of Kevin and Chris and Nancy. It was on the news, on the Post, the news, the what have you. Pictures of them, because I had them. I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does.
Nope, that's
it does. All right, so George, we're almost out of time. We're going to hit you with something called the Pharaoh's Final Question.
Oh, no.
Where Jimmy Farrow,
Oh,
unscripted,
no. Yep.
comes up with any type of question.
It's a
He's been
ridiculous
known
question.
to ask people if they like
Stop.
boxers or briefs,
Boxers or
ketchup or
brief.
mustard, whatever it's going to be.
Ketchup or
So
mustard.
have at it, Jimmy.
You know, it's funny. I usually ask a serious question, but since you did it, I'm going to do it this one time. And bear with me, George. You're the teacher, and I want you to grade this student as a photographer. Felix Unger, pass or fail?
pass.
He passes
tried
Felix
hard.
Unger.
Wow.
Interesting.
He
Okay.
he tried hard. He worked hard. He wanted to get that image, and I always remember one of the openings where they open the door and he's developing with the negative and it spoiled all the pictures, and it reminds me of a couple times that I was developing photos and and the door opens and all the pictures that I took destroyed.
Oscar. Excellent. He's passing the great Tony Randall. Nice.
All right, George.
Nice.
The Mount
Rushmore of what?
Of
Photographers?
not photographers.
what? Him,
Your
him,
Mount
and him.
Rushmore of
Yeah.
professional wrestling, please.
Ooh, give us 4 of your. That
Oh, that's a
belong on the
hard.
mountain.
That's
It
you
could be
know-
your era, whatever you feel belongs up there.
I've done this a few times, several times. In
Oh.
fact, I think first of all, Andre the Giant.
Okay,
Andre,
sure.
he's known as the wrestler. Andre, everybody knows Andre just from being Andre. I think Andre, I have to say Bruno Sammartino. And again, you're gonna, depending on your age, the Mount Rushmore changes. I think The Rock belongs on there. Maybe not as high, but for what he did in the '90s, and then Hulk Hogan.
Okay. He said Hulk Hogan, so
I know I'm
we're
missing
good.
people.
Yeah, no, that's as long as you said Hogan.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, I don't think at this point he gets the credit he deserves. I mean, he did what he did. And everything is built off of Hulk Hogan, seriously.
Yeah.
He
Yep.
he promulgated it, he carried it forward, and he made it very popular. And to this day, the people don't like, for some reason, he doesn't have that oomph anymore that he had.
Right.
He should.
Yeah, well, he does to those who remember him as great as he
Yeah.
was during the day. It's these independent marks today that want to see a cartwheel fest. They pick on a guy like Hulk Hogan. He doesn't do enough athletically. He's just a showman. Isn't that half of the trick?
I know. See, we're running out of time, but that you just made me think of something. I remember seeing Mil Mascaras, and Mascaras against Superstar Graham in the Garden was great.
yeah.
Mascaras was probably one of my favorites. I mean, he was so colorful and so good. But to today's standards, Mascaras does nothing.
Right.
But if it wasn't for what little that Mascaras did, and it was a lot at that time,
Sure.
we wouldn't get Rey Mysterio and all these others doing what they do.
Sure. I think it even begins with Antonino Rocca, quite honestly. Some of the
Oh,
things.
for sure. Anthony Rocca.
George,